A former combat spy with over 1,000 missions gives us his unique perspective to leadership, strategy, and even baseball today on Locked On A's.
You are Locked On A's, your daily podcast on the Athletics, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On A's, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I am your host, Booney. Thank you for making Locked On A's your first listen of the day. I'm from the Bay Area, and I've been a die-hard A's fan since 1981, and I'm here to bring you a real fan's take, covering everything from Oakland to Sacramento to Las Vegas. This is the place for A's fans to get the latest game breakdowns, team news, and more. This is where the passion of the fans takes center stage. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. And please hit that subscribe button wherever you are following the show. Merry Christmas, happy holidays. And boy, do I have a belated gift for you today. On today's episode, we are joined by Pete A. Turner, a former Army combat spy with a wealth of experience navigating high-stakes environments. Pete's professional background includes over 1,000 missions in conflict zones like Iraq, Afghanistan, and Bosnia. He's also a lifelong Oakland A's fan with a passion for the game and a deep connection to the team's history. Today, Pete brings his unique perspective to a conversation that blends his love of baseball with his insights on leadership, culture, and resilience. Talking to an individual like Pete does not come around too often. You are expecting something earth-shattering, something that blows your mind. That wasn't the case with Pete. I wouldn't say Pete's perspective or what he had to say was anything earth-shattering, but it constantly made sense in a way that was his, in a way that was honest, and most importantly, when you put it all together, it was beyond refreshing. In fact, it was so good and so refreshing that I had to break his interview down into 2 episodes. Part 1 is today, and part 2 is tomorrow. I could have easily talked to Pete for hours to a point where we would have to rename the show Locked On Pete. We'll learn about Pete's time in service, how his experience on the battlefield shaped his worldview, and what lessons from his military career he applies to life as a baseball fan. As a loyal fan, Pete offers a heartfelt take on what the relocation means for the team, the fans, and the city of Oakland. We'll also explore the issues surrounding attendance, free agency, and how the franchise's approach to building a team has affected the fan base. First, the A's leaving Oakland and going to Las Vegas. Pete weighs in on the criticism of A's owner John Fisher and how it ties into the broader culture of sports today, from the impact of business decisions on a team's identity to the growing divide between ownership and loyal fan bases. Pete shares a thoughtful analysis of the dynamics at play. This episode is packed with heartfelt reflections, sharp insights, and plenty of baseball talk that you won't want to miss. Before we get started with Pete, big news out of the A's camp with the resignation of A's president, Dave Kaval. It has social media in a frenzy as Oakland fans are languishing in the demise of hated Dave Kaval. Let me give you my take on such an important turn of events for the A's franchise. Well, let's get started with Pete Turner. Did you grow up as an A's fan?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, my dad worked at AC Transit, and so
Is that
one
right?
of his main spots was right across the street, right? And so I'd get when I got old enough to, which wasn't very old. This in the modern times, you'd be like, "What in the world are you letting your kid do?" But I would take off from the house and I would get all the way out to Oakland. And it cost a couple of bucks, but I had a paper route or whatever. And then I'd just walk over to my dad's work, unexpected, unannounced, because there was no like, "Hey, I'm going to come take a ride home from you." And I would just walk from the Coliseum to AC Transit, which is, for those that aren't, it's I'm saying across the street, which it is, but it's a long way to walk around, and there's really walking on International Avenue isn't the safest thing to do, but maybe back then I just didn't care, didn't know, So yeah, I've been an A's fan for a long, long time. My first game was an A's game.
Do you remember it?
Wayne Gross threw a
Wayne
ball
Gross?
over there.
That was probably what, 879, 80?
Something like that. Yeah, because I was in elementary school. Yeah. He threw a
Billy
ball
Martin?
up. He rolled it up the dugout.
Sure.
It's kind of tiered right there. And so I reached out for my friends and I grabbed the ball, and that was it. Hook, line, and sinker. I loved it. I love Wayne Gross. I love baseball, and it all sort of started in that fifth grade. Probably, yeah, fifth grade. Fifth grade was when really I got hooked. But I'd been to games before that. I believe, I don't have the ticket to prove it, but I believe I saw Ricky Henderson's debut game.
Wow.
It's crazy
when
you think about all the things. Yeah.
Obviously, the biggest attention surrounding the A's right now is not baseball. It's what's going on off the field with the move to Sacramento, then to Las Vegas. Everybody has an opinion on who's to blame and who's not to blame and what should have been done, and etc. What is your take? What's your opinion personally on that whole situation?
I'm going to give my take, but I'm also going to give the take. I know a lot of people in the loud folks who are angry. I get it and I understand it, but also I'm from your guys' club and I do hold account, right? Like I do put blame on the fans. Not all of it, it's shared, but we can blame fans. And so I look at the history of the A's and I see all this winning. You've talked about this on your show. Listen, I'm like, yeah, exactly. I don't have the exact number, but I believe the winning percentage during the A's time in Oakland,
it's ridiculous.
514 or 521, something like that.
Highest,
over almost 60 years. Are you kidding me? That's great. That's not true for the Pirates. That's not true for the Cubs. That's not true for a lot of teams. And so we have struggled. And Oakland is always, I'm saying Oakland, I mean the A's. The A's have always struggled to establish a foothold with the Bay Area. In part, and this is the thing I figured out, is the Bay Area is a wonderful place, and you don't have to go to a baseball game in the summer. We used to not go to Candlestick because it was harder to get to. It was more miserable. And so people didn't go. Once they fixed that, man, people would go. I would go. And I'm not against the Giants. I love the Giants, but it was easier to go to the Coliseum. And once that got changed for the Giants, that was a huge advantage. And the A's could never figure out the answer to get people in their yard reliably. I get it. I was there. I remember during the great Haas years when it was blowing up. And that was the apex of the Oakland A's time. However, I also remember, and we can all do the math, that for the most of the time during the Haas era, even the vaunted Haas era, the A's fans rejected the team and they didn't go. So there is a problem with the relationship, and has been the entire time, between the A's, the community, and the government. They just have never been in sync. And these are hard things. Take it out of Oakland, and you look at Tampa, you look at Minnesota, all these different places. The Coyotes have left. It's hard to manage these three things where you can reliably get people to support your team. You can reliably stay current in the marketplace, the sports marketplace, with your building and how you make money. But it's really, really tough to do. And I don't know that you can reliably do it. I think it's even harder in a two-team market. So when I say, hey, the fans have responsibility, I'm also saying it's a two-team market. It is really hard. Like the Giants, if the A's could have lost the Giants at any point in the last 25 years, they would have celebrated. Fine, we got some room to work, right? So these are complicated things, but that's my opinion, is that it's a shame that it happened. It was sort of inevitable, probably by about 1991. It was inevitable, we didn't know it then, but the A's had lost the Battle of the Bay to the Giants.
If you were to ask me 2-3 weeks ago, I would say that the A's never had any intention of staying in Oakland. The ideas of all the projects that were brought up, whether it was Fremont, East Oakland, Howard Terminal, Jack London Square, I believe they talked about a little bit, building on site. 2-3 weeks ago, I would say all smoking mirrors. Actually, I had a show on it where I basically say it was all BS. They never had any intention of staying in Oakland, and this started way back with Bud Selig. Bud Selig started this movement. He appointed, basically, Leo Wolf, who was his college roommate, college fraternity brother at the University of Wisconsin, to be the owner of the A's as a minority partner with John Fisher, even though you had Reggie Jackson and Bill Gates come in with a higher number to buy from Schott and Hoffman. As time has gone on, I don't know. I don't want to say it's a political issue, but I will say Nevada is 10 times easier to get things done than California. I mean, I don't think that's a secret or I'm shocking anybody there. If Oakland completely catered to John Fisher and his wishes, maybe it would have been done. But at the same time, was that even possible? What's your opinion? Do you feel like the A's ever had an intention of staying for the last 20 some odd years?
Yeah, of course. And you're saying 20. I'm just going to go 60, right? Because the entire time the A's were here, there was always a constant rumor of them leaving. And we're not trying to take account to everything here, but let's just throw in there when Greg Lukenbill and I can't remember right now the mayor of Sacramento at the time, when those guys were like, "Hey, come out to Sacramento, we'll build you a stadium, we'll get this done," right? And the Raiders were getting the same pitch from Sacramento. Sacramento wanted to step up. Sacramento, people don't know, Sacramento and Oakland, they're comparable sized, and there's a lot of people around Sacramento, and now there's even more people around Sacramento. These guys were looking at the future and saying Sacramento is going to become a major league destination. So that pull was right there. For a while, the A's and the Raiders almost moved to Concord and that area over there. And that easily could have been a great spot, because one of the things that is true about Oakland is it is geographically challenged, because a lot of its border is a gigantic bay that it's harder to get across. Like, nobody from Marin is relishing the thought of getting across Marin over to the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge and still being 45 minutes potentially from the ball yard. Like, that's just a hard sell to make. Wow. There's not a ferry going up to anything. So there's a lot of challenges there that made it always uncomfortable to be in Oakland. I don't blame anybody for wanting to improve the condition of their business. And so whether it's when Schott owned the team, he was a developer. He was going to build a stadium, right? We're going to get this thing built. Even during the Haas era, it's like, hey, we're going to have to look at a stadium because the new Comiskey is up. The new Baltimore Park is there. Toronto is killing it. Back then, Toronto was drawing 4 million fans a year. Right. Everybody saw that and said, how do we get more of that? And the A's had the luxury of having all this land. But, California, man, if I'm going to say this in a positive way, everybody has rights here in California. Groups, institutions, corporations, and people. And we can gather and we can fight for the thing that we want to fight, and we'll get our day in court. That means that it's really, really, really hard to build things. When they finally approved and everything was set up for the Giants to get their stadium, you can go back and read newspapers at the time. You can still, in every article, they're like, however, there's a pending lawsuit. However, and so even as they were going forward, every step is challenged, and it should be in the court of law. And then you have things like the California Coastal Commission, the Army Corps of Engineers, all these barriers that you have to get through. It just becomes impossibly expensive. So were they always going to leave? I don't know that they were ever fully there. It was a very hard task to land that team and make them firmly actually rooted. I don't think it ever really happened.
Does John Fisher deserve the criticism he is getting?
No. And when I'm saying that, I'm not saying he's perfect, but when we look at and we say Fisher all the time, then we have missed all of the other problems that have come along, all of them. And so it's not just him. And you'll know this. A lot of the angry A's fans ignore the fact that Leo Wolf was running the team. Like, he wasn't the owner for the last. Yes, he owned the team, but he wasn't the owner who was doing things. And Leo Wolf, by the way, developer. He's like, I absolutely can get this thing built. That's what I do for a living. I develop projects and buildings, and I get this thing done. And he left frustrated, right? And so when you have that environment, you have to have a local government in Deimos that wants you to be there and acts like it, a good business partner like Vegas has. You have to have a fan base that's robust and supports you. And the A's rejected 2 different World Series teams. They rejected the 74 A's, basically didn't show up. And we lose track of this, but the 88 A's, the juggernaut 104 win Bash Brother A's that were all over the place. Yeah, they were 4th in the American League West in attendance. 4th.
Yeah, you're right.
That's bullshit, right?
Yeah,
and so when we say, you can't blame the fans, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
How many people came to see Jose Canseco in 85? How many people came to see McGuire in 86 when these guys were coming up? Everybody knew they were coming. Yeah. Nobody fucking showed up. Sorry, I'm cussing because it drives me crazy when people readjudicate the past.
No, you're right.
So Fisher has problems. Fisher hasn't been great, but look what he was dealing with. I don't know that I could have done a better job. You know, and I don't know what kind of money. No one tells anybody what kind of money they have, because if you're broke, you don't want to tell about it. And if you're making a killing, you don't want to tell about it. We have this magical thing with Fisher where he's simultaneously greedy and broke. I'm not that hard on the A's because they've been behind the market for so long and trying to move. Like if you think you're going to move every other year, you know, you're just like, okay, we have to cut back costs to make it so we can move. And if you never move, well, then your business has been starved for a long time. Partly through circumstance, maybe some of that's through management as well, right? But, you know, getting them healthy and robust and in Vegas is going to be the best thing for baseball in terms of the A's, because now they're thriving where they were in Oakland in a dead market that didn't want them. And so
this episode is brought to you in part by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place. Whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscriptions tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. The A's have won, and I've gone through this. Attendance has been awful. The only times the A's attendance was great was during those 80s teams, right? But they took a model of free agency, right? Versus now is more of a model of, hey, draft, build through the farm system, young kids, you know, etc.
Yeah.
Is sports and baseball becoming more of a, hey, the only way you're really going to get attendance if you get the big stars and you have the new stadium and winning is a distant third?
You know, this is the question. And I don't know. I have my beliefs and I try to challenge my beliefs all the time. The A's and other teams built a better way to play baseball. They reduced errors. They saved money. And here's a thing that's proven over and over and over again in baseball. You spend all the money you want, still one team wins. And still young players are going to outperform more reliably older players. And so if you sign a bad contract, it's like you're putting handcuffs on yourself. You know, the Dodgers, everybody's losing their mind about the Dodgers. And I love the Dodgers. They're the team I follow the most day to day. I promise that they are making mistakes. They're making calculated, but not all these contracts are going to work out. I'm not against Shohei Ohtani. I think he's incredible, but he should not be stealing bases. There's a academic paper that talks about the more times a Major League Baseball player hits the ground, the higher and more inevitable comes the injury. So why do you want Shohei running 60 times and smashing into, because he's one of the fastest players in the league too. Knock it off with that stuff. So what happens? He blows out his shoulder. That shoulder will never be as good as his original shoulder. He's on his third elbow, right? And they have committed $700 million to him, right? Like that's highly risky. And it may not work out. Maybe you can absorb that. But then you're like, let's go sign somebody else and somebody else and somebody else. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It never has. It never will. When we think about the Yankees who spent all that money, which teams won? Yeah, they won in, was it 2009? Yeah, they won with a pretty great team then. But it wasn't the Jason Giambi Yankees. He never won. You know, a lot of these guys never won. So they signed Nick Swisher. Nick Swisher never won a World Series. So the teams they won with were homegrown prospects that came up. Jeter, Rivera, all those dudes, Williams, and then guys like Leyritz and hey, how about it? Oakland A, Scott Brosius, right?
Yeah.
These weren't world beaters. And so they built a team. And by the way, it takes a lot of luck. You can't spend your way past luck. So I would say no matter what, if you can develop, this is where the Dodgers trick the system. If you can develop talent, if you can rediscover talent, if you can rehabilitate talent, then you can always have multiple streams of talent coming into your team. If you're relying on a free agent savior, that is a dangerous proposition then, and it is now. You think of someone like Prince Fielder, you know, what a world beater, right? And couldn't live out that contract because he got old. And not a surprise, a dude with that kind of body type, those guys typically don't age well. And so you sign it, and now you're stuck with that. You're paying that guy, and that cost is spread out over 30 years. Maybe financially it's no big deal, but in the league and the way it works, it costs you things. And so I don't know. The answer is it's really hard to win, and luck plays a huge factor in the postseason. The Dodgers only barely won that World Series. Yes, you know, they won it, and when you look back, like, oh, it was easy, right? You know, 13 wins or whatever.
They lose to the Padres. I mean, we're having a different discussion about it.
Yeah, people lost their mind because Kershaw went out with what was left of his shoulder, which was nothing, and got destroyed. And like, see how much he sucks? Like, no, the dude he had his surgery to repair his shoulder. Oh, and by the way, and repair his toe and repair his knee. Like, he's a pretty beat up dude, you know? So anything can happen in baseball. It's one of the things that makes it great. The Royals aren't supposed to win. And if you think about this too, if you have perfect parity, a team wins about every 30 years. Now you put in a margin of error for the fact that, you know, it doesn't work that way. And you may not see a World Series win for 60 years and have it be totally statistically normal. So I don't know the path to victory, but I know that you cannot afford many bad mistakes.
Pete, tell me a little bit about your background. I was looking over your bio. Seems like you've been everywhere in the world twice and have been through a lot of impressive things.
I was born in Oakland and have been all around the Bay. Primarily, I'm like an East Bay kind of guy, but I mean, I've been all over the Bay. I know so many people throughout the Bay Area. So it's where I'm from, man. And when I'd be abroad and I would come home and like you fly into SFO, that, you know, it just, my body started to like balance out. And then you're driving across the Bay Bridge and you can see like the Mormon temple on the hill and all these things just remind you like, hey, this is where you're from, you know. And it just felt great to me to always come home, and it still feels great. And I say home, I often mean the Bay, you know. So it's amazing. I graduated from Cal State Hayward.
Okay. and I spent it for Hayward State.
Yeah. And you know, the thing is they didn't teach me how to get a job. I would go to the job fair at Hayward, and it's like, do you want to sell something? I'm like, no, I have a TV radio degree. I want to get into the TV radio business. I'd like to be a sportscaster. And they're like, yeah, no, this is Enterprise Rent-A-Car. We're going to give you a tie, and you're going to wash cars and run a shop. It's a really great opportunity. And I'm like, yeah, it is, I'm sure, but I'm going to be a sportscaster. Man, I tried so hard to get anywhere, ground floor, holding cables, mopping up the floor, and nobody would give me a job. And it wasn't me. It was just, it's a very hard thing to get into. Sure. And I didn't have an uncle or whatever. And so I went to the Army. I had no idea I was going to be in the Army a month before I joined. And so I kind of one day went to the recruiter, and then I said, oh, all right, let's do it. And so I became a counterintelligence agent, which for all intents and purposes, that's a spy. And my job is to build a network of informants and find out things that people wouldn't otherwise tell somebody from the United States. And it turned out I was really good at it because the job is very similar to being a reporter and a salesperson. And I have skills in those areas.
Where were you deployed? Where did you do most of your counterintelligence?
I have done a lot of things in a lot of places, but the primary places are Bosnia, Egypt, well, then Iraq and Afghanistan, so really Iraq is the place that I've been the most. And I've spent a lot of time there, and I wouldn't say all of it, but in a lot of different areas, because I bounced around quite a bit when I was there. So I've got over 70 months in combat zones and done about over 1,000 combat missions.
Is that
so
right?
It's crazy. Yeah.
Wow. That is, Jesus, that is something. So a master communicator, master manipulator too, maybe?
You know what? When you're younger, that's what you try to do. When you get older, you realize you don't have to do the manipulating. You find different ways to get the information you want. And so I've reached in my field, you tend to at the longer you in, the further you get away from the ground. Because my career was very atypical, I was able to stay at the ground and just get better and better and better at collection. So, when you only have, imagine this, like you're going to be a spy and you're going to go to Iraq and you go on 2 tours and you spend, let's say 18 months. You're not going to become a master at anything in 18 months. Like you're not even, like if you went to the gym every day for 18 months, you would be in really good shape, but you would not be, you wouldn't be elite, right? You'd just be like a guy who goes to the gym. Right. And so that's sort of how it works in the spy world, from my point of view, for the kind of collecting that I did. There's a lot of kinds of collecting, but in my world, 18 months and you're just like a little precious baby, you've got a lot more seasoning to do to get yourself up to speed. And it's not 3 years. It's a long time, a lot of mistakes. And that's the thing. I got over that hump and I could see the difference between where I was and people coming out of school and how raw they were. And that further advanced me because I could see where they were and I could more quickly adapt to an area than they could.
It's such an amazing subculture. And I know we're supposed to talk baseball a little bit, but I think most people listening, and at least I am, would just be amazed by this. And I don't mean to sound naive or anything by this, but I think the only way we have to compare any type of subculture, that type of world, is to the movies and what we see. Is there any accuracies to what we see as far as the cinema goes? And is there any type of movie that you've seen like, hey, that probably best depicts what we did?
Of course there's accuracies in it. They're trying to attach reality to the fantasy, right? And so like with Jason Bourne, I'm a pretty big dude. I'm pretty strong. And when I was younger and in better shape, I'm 6 foot and I weigh 200 pounds. No matter what I do, I'm just bigger than a lot of people. And so when I go into a room, and if I'm going to be working or just in general to practice, I know who I need to deal with and I know how to deal with them. And usually it's like, I'm going to throw a chair across because I can hook a chair pretty far because I'm big and strong. Right. But I also know how to get out of there. I know how to evade and go out and make 2 left turns and be gone, right? Like you learn these kind of things either through repetition and practice or through studying things. But for me, the spy school that I went to was very mundane. You wouldn't think that there was all that much excitement. If you went to it, you'd be like, oh my God, this is so boring, because there's a lot of policy and procedure. And my job is a lot of facets, right? And a lot of it is law enforcement. I'm not really the law enforcement kind of counterintelligence agent. I'm more of like the person who infiltrates. And so for me, I had to learn a lot of these things on the ground. I had to read them in books and kind of self-educate myself. And so, yes, there's some Jason Bourne in me. I don't practice this anymore, but back like when I was working a lot, I could tell you within a person or two how many people were in the room, right?
Is that right?
The stuff like James Bond, when he does and he sits down and does like plays Baccarat or something like that, I can sit at a table and have several conversations at once when I'm sitting there. And I don't mean like I'm talking to 3 or 4 people. I mean, I'm having the conversation, the base conversation like you and I are having. My brain is clocking for other things. I might be paying attention and eavesdropping to something else. So my brain can compartmentalize things. And also and again, I don't have to do these things anymore. So they're not, it's finally, it's like being a professional ball player, right? Quickly your skills degrade to more normal things.
Okay.
So I can remember whole conversations. And look, if I'm missing 5 words out of 100, okay. But these are small details, right? Like I know what was said and I could write down almost verbatim what was said from long conversations because I was forced to rely on my memory. And so I worked to develop it and it became really great at those kind of things. So those are the kind of things that are similar to the movies.
Do you miss it a lot or are you glad it's done? Or a little both?
Both. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. This will sound ridiculous, but when I decided to stop going to war, I was identifying with the song Desperado. Like I was the desperado. There was no too cold anymore. There was no too hot. I was just missing my life. I didn't feel anything anymore. And I'm like, man, I got to get back to living. And so I don't miss having to be gone. I missed so many years of my daughter's life when she was small. I missed so many nights of going to Buffalo Wild Wings and watching games with my buddies. I have a lot of friends. I love to see my friends. And so I couldn't see them. And also, by the way, I was driving myself crazy. I was an absolute wild man because I had no rules. My whole world was a war. And so when I came home, you could ask all my friends from that time, I was crazy. I would do things that are completely inappropriate, say things, expect things that aren't the real world because I didn't live in a real world. So I don't miss that. I like having a more calm Southern California life. I like going out and seeing things. And so what I try to do to replace some of that stuff is I do like you. I have a show and I talk to people and I go places. And I consider my show kind of a form of what I used to do. Every episode is like a field report.
Does it bother you, the conflict we have today, whether it's in sports, whether it's in politics, etc., that goes on? Because I can only imagine that people here don't really know what true conflict is. Does it bug you, or is it something that's, hey, it's the way it is? Or
it is the way it is.
Just the way it is, yeah.
Everything is a competition. Everything is a competition.
Yes.
And so I understand that. And you're not supposed to enjoy the hard parts of competition. It's great when you win, but that's at somebody else's expense, right? And so when you see real conflict, real misery,
right,
you understand that, or real danger, when someone says that's dangerous, I'm like, yeah, you maybe want to be a little bit careful, but it's not that dangerous, Like I've been in a head-on collision with an M1 Abrams tank. There's nothing more life-threatening than that because that thing can accidentally squish you into oblivion, right? So now if it tried to, oh my God, I guess even worse.
Yeah.
So when you have danger and experiences like that, you just get a different perspective.
Yeah.
It's like we are kings and queens here in the United States. And we lose sight of just how incredibly fortunate we are here. And yeah, we're like a rolling gunfight with all our talks and our politics and everything else. But if you really step back and appreciate what you have and don't take it for granted and focus on conversations, I think all of a sudden you find out like, hey, it's not that, it's actually pretty sweet here. It's not that bad. Let's calm down.
Be sure to tune in tomorrow for part 2 with Pete Turner. Thank you for making Locked On A's your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts.